Why you wanted to work with me?
I suppose obviously the content is a factor. I had seen your content, I knew you were in sales, but it was more when I talked to you directly that you could point out like specifically this was wrong, that was wrong with my specific pipeline. When you came in, it was very obvious that like I could book 12 calls a day, but every good business has a sales process, so just get it done. If you're considering it, you're probably already too late. Do it now so you're not wasting any more time. The sales process is one thing, but then the ability to obviously sell directly on a call, learn like the whole process, what's optimal for my specific niche to sell to people who I'm selling to, multiple calls per week. The sales process now is literally seamless.
What results did you actually achieve then in terms of numbers since we started working together?
My close rate, like 1 week 5%, next week will be 15%. I was probably making like 20K, 15K a month, something like that.
Tell me, what type of business are you involved in?
Yeah. So I'm Adam. I'm the founder of HDM. We're basically an email marketing agency for e-commerce stores. And we basically obviously build funnels to get e-commerce owners into the pipeline.
Okay, how long have you been doing that?
Founded HDM probably like 14 months ago now. So just over a year I've been running the business, yeah.
What made you decide to want to speak to me initially?
Yeah, so I suppose like it really goes back to when I was booking probably like 8-10 calls a day. Like that's when I initially came to you, because I really felt like I had the pipeline cracked and I was booking so many calls, but like the statistics were showing probably like 8-10% close rate, or even less or more on some days, obviously depending on the week. But I had calls in the calendar, I'd cracked that code, so the next code was making sure my time was more efficient with the calls I was taking. That's when I initially obviously reached out to you.
So obviously there are many sales coaches, consultants. Why do you think you chose me out of everyone you could have worked with?
I suppose to find someone who's more specific to agency, or like has worked with agencies before. Like obviously I knew you'd worked with Frostmailer before when I spoke to you, but I don't know, the content you had posted kind of seemed specific to the problems I were having, obviously regarding the amount of calls I was taking and the low qualification rate, like all of that stuff. But I don't know, I suppose it just comes down to the content resonated with the problems I was having, and I knew you worked with Frostmailer at the time, so it just kind of made sense to reach out and see what you could do.
So obviously you said Frostmailer was originally who I worked with, and that's why you wanted to initially reach out. Who's Frostmailer? What are Frostmailer?
Yeah, so Frostmailer, like obviously to book the calls in the calendar for us, like we use cold email primarily as our acquisition channel. So Frostmailer are the company that I use to get those inboxes. They're just another agency essentially who sell to more people like me who run agencies. And I knew obviously the founders of Frostmailer, and I knew they worked with you obviously to build the pipeline to get people in, so they can convert at a higher rate in terms of sales calls, but they're just another agency who sell obviously inboxes to B2B businesses.
So was there something specific about the content or the results, the people that I worked with, that like resonated with you of why you wanted to work with me?
I suppose obviously the content is a factor. Like there's a lot of noise going out obviously regularly with like people who claim to do this or claim to do that, like obviously regarding increasing your close rate or whatever it is. But I suppose like I had seen your content, I knew you were in sales, but it was more when I talked to you directly that you could point out like specifically this was wrong, that was wrong, and it was pretty evident then on the surface level, like this was what was going wrong in the business to get a better close rate. So like the content's kind of there, but until really like I spoke to you one-on-one, like on a call for whatever 20-30 minutes, you pointed out like quite evidently like this was what was wrong with my specific pipeline. That's really when I started to realize, because honestly like I didn't even realize, and I'm sure like a lot of people will be in the same spot where like they won't realize that the problem is as big as it is. Like I had genuinely no idea that I would even need to help or have help building out a sales pipeline or building out some sort of a sales team per se. But when you came in, it was very obvious that like I could book 12 calls a day, but if you're taking 8 of those were disqualified, like there's absolutely no point in booking those calls originally. So I mean the content's great, the case studies are great, and they obviously were a big factor to why I spoke to you initially, but like when I got on that call is where I got the most value, so you could pinpoint exactly like what was going wrong right now, if that makes sense.
Did anyone refer me?
Yeah, I mean obviously like I suppose we spoke about like when originally I had reached out to you, like I knew obviously I'd seen your content, I'd followed you on Instagram particularly for a while, and I had knew Frostmailer. I worked with Frostmailer for inboxes for the last like 7-8 months at the time. So they had obviously referred you over and I'd seen your content. So when I reached out, I had already seen you worked with a company similar to mine. I seen your content was very specific to agencies like mine. And obviously you had experience, selling to my niche directly as well, which obviously helped too. But yeah, I mean, I suppose, I guess you could say I was referred over by Frostmailer originally, yeah.
Yep. Thank you, James. So obviously you spoke about when we initially got in contact, but what problems were you facing when you were initially came to me?
I always find it very weird, because back then my problem was that I was running a large volume of cold email. I was booking probably, I won't even say, probably like 5-6 meetings a day, 5 days per week, taking those calls, probably closing like 1 or 2 people a week. So my close rate was exceptionally low. I didn't even know there was a problem there. Like I didn't even know there was actually an issue. I just thought that was a kind of standard across the industry. You just need to book more calls. So like when you came in and said like, we can obviously the calendar form, even for, to give you one example of one thing specifically, like we implemented that directly had a big impact, because what that done for me originally was taking less calls, but just filtering out the people who I was going to close to get them on the call so I could focus on booking more calls with more qualified people. So again, taking less calls and closing more deals, which obviously again, just for efficiency and output, I'm not wasting my 7-8 hours in a day just speaking to people who are just DQ'd off the bat, if that makes sense. So it's just that kind of efficiency that I wouldn't have been able to identify without speaking to you to kind of reduce my volume of calls on the calendar and still increase, I suppose, the amount of closes I was getting.
Yeah. Talk about the specific numbers. What was your actual like offer rate and close rate? Do you remember what it was before?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, it was funny. I remember you looked at it, you nearly laughed. Like it was probably I want to say it was definitely less than 50%. Like it was very low. Like if someone was hopping on the call, the chances were they weren't getting pitched.
Yep.
My show rate wasn't terrible. Like my show rate was okay. My offer rate was abysmal. And then my offer to close rate was probably just as bad as the actual show to offer rate. But that was the biggest problem, show to offer, because there was such a large volume of calls I was taking that weren't even getting an offer, which like when you think of it now, like is absolutely ridiculous. But my close rate overall, so my show to offer rate was like probably less than 50%, and my close rate was probably like, I'd say 10% on average. But like overall, there was just no process. Like yourself, like there was no like proper indoctrination. Like sure, I was blasting out emails, to get people on the call. They were showing up, they were cold, they didn't really know exactly what we did. It was a really, really, mind gamey kind of trying to close them or whatever, but it wasn't working. But yeah, like the metrics were probably just a 10% close rate at a high level.
Okay, what was your biggest obstacle in improving these issues yourself?
The main one for me just comes down to the amount of energy I had in the day to put towards something like this. Because like I felt as if I was doing the right thing. Like you wake up in the morning, you've got 7 calls on the calendar. Like as a business owner, you're thinking, great, calendar's full, I'm doing my job, I'm taking these calls. But like realistically, I wasn't going to sit down after taking 7 hours of sales calls on top of doing client fulfillment to say, yeah, I need to fix this specifically in the sales process to, get less calls and close more deals. So the biggest challenge for me was taking the time to actually say this was what was wrong specifically in the pipeline. So on top of not knowing my pipeline was wrong, I also didn't have the time, in my mind at the time anyway, to go ahead and sit down and really map out my whole sales process A to Z and kind of fix that on my own. So I suppose it was just like overall a really lack of expertise, because I'd spent so long, on the marketing. Like I know cold email like the back of my hand. I know how to book calls, but I had no idea like how to build a proper sales process to optimize for close rate, show up rate, like offer to like all of these different metrics that you pointed out at the beginning when we spoke. But again, just expertise and time, I suppose, were the two things I really lacked per se, as most people will, I can imagine.
And then after the initial conversations that we had when we actually started working together, what was that experience like actually working with me on like a day-to-day perspective?
I remember it's funny because the first time when we start working, like obviously the first thing like you really done was because you were able to identify like straight off the bat like some levers that immediately improved my close rate. Like I wasn't taking a load of calls, like I wasn't, you remember how angry I used to be after taking like 7-8 calls in a day, like at the end of the day calling you, like how fuming I was with the whole sales process at the time before I started working with you. But like I suppose you immediately from day one like pull levers. So I was taking less calls, the calls I were taking were more qualified. My show to offer rate was a lot higher, so meaning I could actually hop on the call knowing the chances of me offering this person are very, very high, and then naturally enough I'm going to get more sales out of that. And that was from day one, because obviously when you've done it before, you have the expertise. It's not difficult for you to come in and implement the proven structure you already have built into my business, because it's not like anything different to anyone else. So that was from day one, and obviously then the ongoing calls, because the sales process is one thing, but then the ability to obviously sell directly on a call, learn like the whole process, what's optimal for my specific niche to sell to people, like for example, e-commerce business owners who I'm selling to. All of that we had weekly, multiple calls per week, where we went through like that whole process and basically broke down any possible bottleneck I was facing. And then obviously on top of that, we could talk about the setter deployment and basically everything built now that like the sales process now is literally seamless. But it was just from day one, there was constantly just I suppose, what's the word? Picking out a bottleneck, focusing on that, fixing that, and then moving on to the next. Because there always is going to be something in the pipeline that's causing something for like the optimal result. but it was just the immediate changes. That's what I really liked anyway, personally.
Talk to me about the accountability side, because you mentioned that a couple of times and you said that was a benefit. So talk to me about that.
I don't know how you have the patience for it, because like when we started initially and you were like, I would call you, I was frustrated, like I was angry, like I wasn't doing the follow-ups. So like the follow-ups was one huge thing, like from off the bat, of like having the follow-up specifically with people after the call, and like being held accountable at the end of the day, knowing I was going to call you and tell you what I'd done. Like as a business owner, you don't necessarily have to report to anyone.
Nope.
So when I had took 6-7 calls, like sometimes it was easy not to do the proper follow-up just because I was so tired from taking the calls. But if you were holding me accountable to, did you do this? Did you do this? I was doing it all. And naturally enough, that was just increasing my close rate. And obviously it sounds pretty stupid, because then of course, like, you're going to do the follow-up to get the close. But like just having those calls, you speaking to me regularly, you auditing the sales process, because instead of me just being in control of everything, you were now like nearly controlling, like just looking down from a high level upon everything in the sales process and telling me, this is wrong because you didn't do this. Because it's not rocket science, it's just have the correct structure and have the accountability side where you could tell me, if you keep doing this, we will make this much money. But the accountability was probably, a huge factor, as you know, for me specifically. Anyway. Yeah.
And obviously, as a sales director myself, I like to say that I know what direction a business should be taking. And you often call me just to talk about just like overall like general strategy of like where we should be going, what moves we should be making. Talk to me about that. How do you find that?
I mean, obviously when you work in businesses as you do, who are doing the numbers that we were getting to, like you can help in the sales process, you deploy the sales processes, that like the back of your hand. Like that's obviously the first area of expertise you have. But then when it comes to kind of business wide, like for example, like, my business specifically, like monthly recurring revenue is really what I'm optimizing for. And building a long client, healthy relationship over, years ultimately. So to be able to call you and say, hey, this is the offer I'm running. This is why, I think I want to do it. This is the long-term vision I have for the business in terms of this offer specifically. And then run it by you, because you've been in these different businesses who have had these offers. So you have a very valid opinion to like, okay, this is going to work because of this, or this is my genuine feedback. So instead of me calling you and you just like, let's do that. You had a genuine like thought of like, okay, that's good. This is what we can do in the sales process to adapt to that. And you could understand like then, instead of me as the business owner making the offer, throwing it out, I could run it by you, see your thoughts on it. And then obviously you would just give me a genuine opinion, because you work in so many different businesses. So you know what's working right now to obviously have, in my case, a stronger LTV. But I mean, we've probably talked about practically everything in the business, from fulfillment to hiring to obviously sales. That goes without saying. Like every corner of the business, I know I can just run by you at some stage to make sure like we're heading in the right direction, I guess you could call it.
Yep. How much time and stress have I saved you?
Oh my God, man. I mean, even if you want to go back to when we initially started, like I don't know, when we called, I remember the first time I think I called you, I obviously got your number off James originally. I had took like another day where I had like 9 calls. I had like 3 people actually, or 4 people I pitched an offer to. I had no closes. And it was just like a tough day. And I remember I called you, but it was just the level of frustration and like, because I thought I'd completed, like my calendar was full, like in the agency space. Like if you're booking that amount of calls, you should, in my mind, that was golden to like obviously, get to where I want to go.
Yep.
But the frustration of not closing them, talking to these, I mean, for lack of a better word, degenerates who were never going to buy like what I was selling. But like selling to those people, like all of that is just so frustrating, because once the call's in your calendar and you show up, you're devoting your energy to somebody. So if that's not the right person, or they don't have the right intent because of the wrong indoctrination sequence before the call, you're just wasting so much time. And it's so frustrating, because I know I'm paying money for every single call in the calendar.
Yep.
So I can't even begin to articulate like how much actual pain that would have caused me just to continue doing that. I actually don't even know how I could have coped. Like it was just such a bad time back then, obviously, for the amount of calls I was taking and all that stuff.
So what results did you actually achieve then in terms of numbers since we started working together?
I mean, it's pretty volatile, like naturally enough, like when my close rate, like 1 week would be like 5%, next week would be 15%. Like it was all over the place. I was probably making like 20K a month, 15K a month, something like that. It would depend again on the month, and just in the terms of like how lucky I got, because I had no process. So the only way I would really, have like a 25K a month was if I just got lucky with the calls on the calendar specifically, because I was just booking so many calls. And that was obviously then just with the implementation of, it's funny because it really is like, when you look back on it, like the things you implemented are basic, but they're just knowledge of like, this is working, this is simple, put that in now. immediate effect. And obviously to say like simplicity scales. So like from 15, 20K a month, then obviously we done 50K, pretty much straight after that implementation without having to spend any more money on marketing. So that was obviously the direct high level result. And we could look at all the micro things that had to be done to achieve that outcome, but it was just simple things implemented into the sales process that got us to the 50K. And I've no doubt like we're going to continue to refine the process, obviously to get to 100, 250K a month. But I suppose, without going on too long about it, that's the high level result we got.
So if I'm correct, we went from 20 to 50K.
Without any more marketing again, which is obviously
not too bad.
Because obviously, sales calls aren't cheap to book. So
No.
like when you're booking, a specific amount, you want to make sure, but there's a lot of factors to it. Like even now when I'm thinking of it, like it's a great outcome in a short period of time, but just the simple tweaks really got us there in the end, I suppose.
Yeah. So how does it actually feel now knowing that your acquisition system, your sales system is actually proven, it's good, it works?
It's like after we got that sales process, because obviously the first step for me as business owner was to book the appointments. So once that was done, and then obviously when we fixed the sales process together and we're continuing to refine the sales process now, it works so well to an extent where like I can just look at the business at a high level now and say, okay, this is the problem. For example, it could be fulfillment account managers, it could be getting a different seller in the team, whatever it might be. I have all the channels, I would say, tamed to an extent that like I'm not constantly running after a fire trying to fix something specifically. I've got fulfillment dialed, I've got marketing dialed, and I've got sales dialed into an extent where it's just improving them continuously to get to the next level. But they're all at a base level, foundationally in my mind now set up. So it's just a lot more peaceful. It's a lot more, I don't want to say stoic, but I'm just not, chasing down fires all the time to get to the next level. It's more just like sales is there. I know it's kind of like a lever, flick it on. We've got the indoctrination sequences. We've got all the processes in place to close the deals. So that's not really a concern. It's just one of those things again. It's just moving from that. It's not a concern in my mind anymore. And it's just on to the next thing, which could be, hiring or building a strong team foundation or team culture, whatever it might be. But it's just taking that off my plate in terms of having to worry about taking 10 sales calls in a day that are, unqualified or whatever.
Who would you recommend my service to?
It really depends because like when I started, you can look at it two ways. Like obviously I focused so much on marketing and booking the calls. But if I had spent even 2, 3 weeks, 4 weeks deploying the sales process that we built together into the business before the marketing, I wouldn't have wasted like tens of thousands on booking calls that were ultimately wasted because I didn't have a sales process to close them. So like anybody who can book a large volume of calls in B2B, like if you don't have something in place, it's kind of just a disaster. Like, and I'm speaking from experience, like obviously, when I came in, like, and if you are booking a large volume of sales calls like I was, or you're planning on doing so, you're going to have a sales process there to actually close the deals. So like it wouldn't make sense if you were someone like me who was going to invest a significant amount of time into booking calls if you didn't have a sales process in place. So to keep it, short, anybody who is planning on booking a significant amount of sales calls, because without a sales process in place, as much as I thought it was just complete fluff, I didn't even think I needed it at the time. I thought it was just get on the call and close people, but obviously not. Anyone who can book sales calls needs a sales process. Simple as that.
What would you say to someone on the fence working with me?
Well, obviously if they were on the fence, like obviously when we started initially, there's a lot of fluff. Like obviously nowadays, like everyone's posting content, everyone's kind of talking about helping specifically in different areas. So, I mean, it really is a straightforward, like if you don't have a sales process that's absolutely dialed in, like my sales process is so dialed in now to an extent that like I'm just not worried about it whatsoever. Like just get it done, because it obviously is something that like a lot of these small tweaks you'll have for life, like the indoctrination sequences, like all of these things are not like systems that are like this new strategy that's an AI system that might not work. This has been proven to work so many times. Every good business has a sales process. So just get it done. Like it needs to be done. And I would have obviously got it done way sooner if I had to go back and tell myself. So, if you're considering it, you're probably already too late. So it's just like do it now so you're not wasting any more time. But that's what I'd say.
Would you work with me long term, and if so, why?
Yeah, I mean, obviously we're still working together after the build and release. So like it comes down to a couple of things, because like with the sales process, like when we spoke about obviously initially, like the build and release will do the indoctrination sequences, like everything you need to have a sales process. But the accountability of like sales for me, the way I look at it, whether it be right or wrong, is like painfully simple. Like once the process is in place, which mine is in place obviously, it's about making sure it's executed. And obviously I'm still, I suppose, the rep of the business or sales rep. So to make sure the follow-ups are being done correctly, the setter of the team is dialed into an extent that obviously the calls are qualified, triaged, all of that. Like all of these different things need to be done on a daily basis, regardless of the process or not. So it's just making sure you can hold the team accountable, me included, to like, okay, this call is being closed, this follow-up is being done, this person is being triaged, so the process runs smoothly. Because having a template is one thing, but then having a functional sales team that like is being held accountable to the process that was built initially is a completely different ballgame altogether. So that's obviously why we're still working together now, and we'll continue to keep working together, because of the fact you can hold us accountable to making sure, like 50K a month, whatever, like to get to 250K a month, like same process, keep it simple, keep executing at a high level, and you can hold a whole team accountable to making sure that gets done.
Well, that's it for the client interview. Thank you for your time, and let's keep making some money.